All right. I love having this stream deck, man. I love it. I love it.
It's nice.
I can control everything from here.
It looks nice. It looks handy.
So we have our disco ball on. Can you see it?
I'm loving the disco ball. It adds a nice element.
It feels like, it feels like we never left the 70s. I'm not sure. Like we're back into that sort of hyperinflationary period. It was, well, stagflationary period, wasn't it? It was like high commodity prices, really high commodity prices, really high inflation. Nobody had jobs, just like today. And as this episode is called, it's the Great Reset, Max.
Yeah, it's definitely got a 70s vibe going here with inflation is now coming back and stagflation. And the prices of the commodity markets are showing this that these commodity prices are bottomed out a few months ago, and they're starting to trade a lot higher. And Bitcoin, of course, anticipated this for years and years and years. And when in an absence of any commodity being able to experience legitimate price discovery, Bitcoin was on its vector, and it was just saying, wait a minute, if you're going to print that much fiat money around the world, then something that's absolutely scarce, that is uncensorable, unconfiscatable, immutable, is going to keep rocketing higher in price. And a lot of people figured that out. Now, when I see CNBC and I see people in the money management business talking about Bitcoin now, they got the two or three key buzz phrases. And all these corporations and fund managers are putting out reports which are repackaging essentially what the cypherpunks have been saying for 20 years, but they do it in a very glossy corporate speak way so that consultants and executives can understand because it's written in corporate speak. But it's the same ideas that we've been saying now. We've been saying this for 10 years. The cypherpunks have been saying it for 20 years. I've been involved now for 25 years. So it's the same stuff, but it's packaged and rebranded to make it safe for the C-suite, as it's called, the CEO, the CIO, the
I
CFO.
thought you were going to say Sisu.
No.
No, right. So, yeah, the episode's called Microdosing the Great Reset. As we see with the price of Bitcoin keeping us all up at night. That's why I have my margarita today. I haven't had it for a while, but it's definitely today it's Sats, Margs, and Orange Pill because I need the margarita to stay awake. You can hear it in my voice. I'm kind of like sleepy, a bit sleepy because just the energy that Bitcoin is sending out across the universe. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We're vibrating love. We're
Yep.
vibrating good sensation, and it's even in the Wall Street. Even they're being converted to speaking like freaking philosophers. Like you read their reports, as you say, like some of these hedge fund guys, like the Mooch dude. He sounds like us. Like he sounds like he's infected with the orange pill.
Right. Remember, you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And people go through that learning curve. Even Michael Saylor in 2013, he rejected Bitcoin and didn't really start to get back into it until 2017. So, to some money managers himself, he said you need to throw all of your models out the window. None of the models work. None of the schools of economics are applicable. It's a new asset class that's never existed. It's separation of money and state that's never existed. It's better than gold. So gold's been disrupted after 5,000 years. So there's nothing you can bring to Bitcoin that's original and fresh because it's never been experienced before on planet Earth. It's literally like kryptonite showing up on planet Earth, and it has made the believers into supermen. Imagine all these teenagers who were buying Bitcoin 10 years ago at a buck, who are watching Kaiser Report. Some of them have started their own companies, and some of them have become millionaires and multimillionaires because it gives you superhuman powers. Bitcoin is your superpower.
Bitcoin is your superpower. And the Great Reset, we see these, and we reported on this like back in, during the election cycle, we saw the IMF saying, oh, we need a new Bretton Woods. And we saw the World Economic Forum and the UN saying we need a great reset. So these jokers genuinely think that they're going to have a seat at the table, that they're going to re-architect a system that they crashed, and that we're going to let them, like that we're going to somehow join their, fake citadel. It's not a citadel. It's just, a sandcastle. And they think we're going to join it, but we're not. We've already exited their system. And the Great Reset exposes that. So this by-election sort of thing, this runoff election in Georgia, where it was insane. If you read this stuff, if you read what was happening, if you read the graffiti and vandalism against Nancy Pelosi's house and Mitch McConnell's house. Mitch McConnell's house was plastered with this graffiti saying, "Where's my money? Where's my money?" And you're like, it's that point. So we've gone past that moment where, the peasants were outside the Versailles and they marched there from Paris. And the royal family is like, "Oh, lovey, what's going on with these little peasants? Oh, I could smell them from here." And Marie Antoinette is told, "Oh, they're hungry. They haven't eaten for a few weeks." "Well, let them eat brioche." And we're at that moment where the peasants are outside the gates of DC and saying, "Where's my money?"
Yeah, no, it's a peasant revolt for sure. And America's got a huge peasant class, over 150 million. And they're now figuring out that the government can print money. So during the whole lockdown crisis, it was revealed that the government can simply print trillions and trillions of dollars, right? They didn't really want to make that point clear to the peasants that, in fact, there was no policy, there was no economic school, there was no kind of theory behind what runs the central bank other than to make a few guys incredibly wealthy and the kleptocrats, right? But during this COVID crisis, the government sent out stimulus checks and they just printed up a few $1 trillion. And so people on Main Street had a taste of what Wall Street experienced back in 2008. Remember, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and JP Morgan and all the banks on Wall Street were suffering. And the government printed up what eventually became $17 trillion to bail out the banks. And that, by the way, as we said at the time, Obama could have simply paid down every single mortgage and credit card in America, and it would have cost less than bailing out $17 trillion worth of bad loans on Wall Street, who, by the way, they took that money and simply repeated the whole thing again and gave us the crisis of 2020, 2021, as we predicted they would. So anyway, when the stimulus checks went out, and by the way, those who put their stimulus checks last time into Bitcoin are up over 300% in whatever time, in less than a year. So so when people realize that, wait a minute, you can just send us checks out of nothing. I mean, if there's nothing behind that, there's just man behind the curtain pushing buttons. So now the peasants are not going to forget this. They're not going to go back to working 3 jobs and sleeping in Walmart parking lot and working for subhuman wages anymore. The peasants are ready to throw down.
Well, it works for a short period of time, and it requires the participation of China and Germany to continue making things and sending us goods and services that they manufacture, their manufactured goods. So they have to be willing to continue to send us all those goods. We do have an extraordinary situation in the ports, for example, in America, in Long Beach and stuff. And that is the shipping rates have rocketed because of all that stimulus that was sent to Americans. What did they do? Well, they spent it on goods from China. So there's no room in the ships for all the goods that Americans are buying because, we spend money on goods and services. Well, the spending on goods is up hugely in America because we have all these stimulus checks, but we've slashed our spending on services, and services go into the domestic economy, right? So it's like getting your hair cut. We won't talk about my hair right now, but getting your hair cut, things like that, but also paying rent. That's under services. And nobody's paying rent. They don't have to.
Right. So the trade imbalance with China has actually gone way up.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was one of the goals of the last 4 years, was to get it down. But now it's actually gone in the reverse direction. And of course, yeah, Germany and China, they have to agree to send us stuff for worthless paper dollars until they stop accepting worthless paper dollars, or they need a lot more worthless paper dollars to get the same amount of stuff. And that's called inflation. And I think that has been hidden now for a couple of decades with two major tricks of the trade. You've got one, the psyops, where the government keeps claiming there's deflation and that they're fighting deflation, and by printing more credit. And by printing credit, it's different than money printing. In other words, if you print credit, you're saying that the banks on Wall Street, cost of borrowing money is zero, and they can go borrow $1 billion and buy a Park Avenue apartment and see it go up in value because they made the same thing available to their friends on Park Avenue. And those asset values rise based on the 0% interest loan that they got from the government. And then they can use the asset inflation price as collateral to go borrow another virtually free amount of money to go buy an old master's painting for $100 million. Oh, and by the way, everyone's doing the same thing too. So all of old master's paintings are up 20%. We'll put that on the wall. Oh, you know what? I can use that as collateral to make another $1 billion loan. And this time I'm going to buy, and it just goes around and around. And it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a self-feeding 0% interest rate for the plutocratic Ponzi scheme. And it's obviously, asset inflation is obviously, as Michael Saylor says, a MicroStrategy. It's inflation. You can't pull out this so-called PPI number and say, oh, there's no inflation because PPI is whatever it is. This government published select basket of goods that they pick stuff like plastic toy whistles from China went down in price 20% last month. So that means the entire economy is suffering deflation. That's about what they do. That's extremely disingenuous. So what's happening now is that the credit printing is now rolling over and converting into cash printing, helicopter money, which is not credit printing, but actual money stock. And so means that the price of stuff is going to start to now rocket higher even they won't be able to hide it with the CPI. So the CPI was going to start showing inflation busting out, and they can't stop that.
It's going to be hard. They'll try insane hedonic adjustment, and they'll say, oh, house prices obviously are skyrocketing, right? They're hitting all-time highs. They're just going to say, well, you're going to live in the back seat of your Prius instead. So a Prius only costs $20,000. Your house costs, say, $300,000.
Right. They'll substitute in the CPI basket a house for a cot. They'll say, well, a cot at Walmart only costs $5. So that means there's deflation.
Right. So they're just going to keep on pretending. But anyway, there's the Great Reset. There's Bitcoin, and Bitcoin exposes all the lies. I was surprised, however, by this week, and I have to investigate it more. I'm just, there's just so much. Like, Bitcoin keeps you so busy. Like, I've never been busier in my life just participating in the Orange Pill community, looking at Rick Stoner's art, man. Like, it's just like, he's always dropping new art at like midnight, just when I'm trying to go to bed. And then it's like, oh, look at this art. And it's like, whoa, like the latest is a Max mind-blowing art. But, I was surprised, and it hasn't really been that much news, but the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, ordered banks in America to start accepting public blockchains like Bitcoin. I mean, they're mostly talking about like USDC and Tether, the stable coins. But to start using that like they use AHC, SWIFT, and Fedwire. So ACH, Fedwire, and SWIFT are all centrally controlled by them.
Right.
And so why are they suddenly willing to accept these public blockchains that they don't control? I mean, one theory I have is that China has been working ferociously on their own CBDC. This has been the rumor for a few years, but it's really starting to trickle out that they're actually going to deploy something. So maybe they saw like China's ahead of us because they're a command and control authoritarian economy and they could force this to happen. We're kind of our institutions are bumbling this. They've certainly researched Bitcoin and then the notion of having a centralized CBDC. But, are they just conceding that like, okay, China beat us to that centralized blockchain of a central bank digital currency. So let's like jump ahead of them by just going to Bitcoin, essentially.
Right. Well, this happens with countries all the time. They experiment with crypto. They experiment with national coins. Remember the Petro over at Venezuela, China, the central bank digital currency, and then they all eventually go to Bitcoin. But, I just realized something. I totally misread what you've been saying now for a few days because you were like, oh, the OCC is now allowed for settlement in public blockchains. And I didn't realize, okay, this is the Office of the Controller of the Currency, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, OCC, I always have known that to mean the Options Clearing Corporation.
Oh.
Right? So the Options Clearing Corporation, the OCC, because I was an options trader on Wall Street for many years. So OCC means Options Clearing Corporation. So I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting that the OCC would allow public blockchains for clearance. Okay.
No, it's like the actual freaking Office of the Comptroller of the Currency.
Yeah, okay. I've got to totally rethink this now because I was in a fog because I kept thinking, oh, yeah, okay. So I'm out of the money butterfly put spread and I can allow that to be settled in my margin call with I got to recalibrate my entire thoughts on this. I was living in a fantasy world of OCC misdefinition.
Right. We are going to be speaking on the full dose of Orange Pill this weekend with Preston Pysh, who is promising to look into what the actual ramifications are of this because it was pretty astounding. It was a shock. They announced it at the end of the day after markets closed.
Right. Preston Pysh. I saw something in my tweet stream that he just did a podcast with Jack Mallers about second layer, I guess, or multiple.
Jack Mallers, everybody's talking about it actually in the comments. Like he's just like taking strike global, essentially.
Yeah.
It's just like that kid is pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, we met him. Yeah,
he's been watching Kaiser Report since he was like 8 or 9.
Since he was 8 or 9 years old, or definitely a teenager. He's been watching Kaiser Report, and when we met him in Chicago, like I said at the time, I knew instantly this guy was a baller. He's going to be like incredibly talented and driven guy who's got his head totally focused in the right place. So it's exciting as heck. Zap, the Zap company. And so anyway, he did a podcast with Preston Pysh, and everyone's talking about it. I haven't heard it yet, but they said it's fantastic. And I got to listen to it. I'm going to listen to it. You listen to it. We're probably going to talk about it on this regular podcast coming up this weekend.
Yes, we will. And we will get Jack on Orange Pill. We only do one interview a week. So, on Kai's Report, we do 3 a week. So like you can go through guests and on Orange Pill, it's people like, now do this guest, get this guest, get this guest. And you're like, we only have 4 a month. Like if we had more time, and Bitcoin just like stayed relaxed, just calm down for a bit.
Yeah.
I realized
what,
because I only slept like 3 or 4 hours last night, and I was like, I need a stimulant, and I don't like having coffee late in the afternoon because it makes me a little bit sick. So I was like, what's a stimulant? I realized it's tequila. Tequila is a stimulant. That's why when you go to Mexico, like everybody's like, oh, like they're like rocking down the street. Like everybody's like, hey, you want a taco? Taco, 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 enchilada. Do you want an enchilada? And you're like, that guy's had a lot of tequila.
That's tequila?
Yeah, I think so.
Really? Tequila's a stimulant?
It feels like it. Like it makes me feel awake.
Yeah.
And I want an enchilada right now.
Yeah, an enchilada sounds good. That food in Mexico is so good. The huevo rancho.
Huevos rancheros.
Yeah, huevo rancheros. We was having every morning there for a while with the mole sauce.
That place was amazing.
Yeah, that was an awesome breakfast. I tell you, that's my favorite breakfast.
huevos rancheros
Yeah.
with it had mole sauce. That
Yeah,
was like
mole sauce. Yeah.
that was it. The thing. You don't really have that in America, like the Tex-Mex sort of stuff. Once you go to Mexico City, you realize like Mexican food in America is crap. It's so horrible. You can't
Yeah.
believe it.
Well, I don't
Compared to
think anyone pretends like it's not,
like
right?
none of the stuff that is called Mexican food in America, except for guacamole and chips,
Yeah.
tortilla chips. Like none of it is in Mexico. Like nobody eats
No.
burritos there.
No, it's not like that. But that's the way with all cuisines, like Chinese food
Yeah, yeah.
in America. You don't find any of those dishes in China. French food, a lot of French food in America. It's not really in French food. And same thing with Mexican food. So it gets Americanized, and it's like everything, no matter what country it comes from, it's got 3 pounds of cheese and some MSG and some fake tomato sauce. That's basically it.
Some people say you can find good tacos in the States. That's true. I mean, there are starting to be, that it wasn't until the millennials came along that there was any really good food outside of haute cuisine, like the
Right.
super posh restaurants in Manhattan. Like boomers, Generation X, we didn't care about that.
No, it's like Don Draper's generation. You can see what they were eating there, like the poo-poo platter. You go to the
Yeah.
Chinese food restaurant, it's like, I have a poo-poo platter and an egg roll, right? And it's like, that's Chinese food. And that was that generation. And then the hipsters come along and they start doing artisanal, regional, farm to table,
Yeah.
gastronomically exquisite cuisine. And yeah, it's really good. It's good stuff for sure. There's been a foodie revolution in America, and there is now a lot of good food. But by and large, though, the sad diet, the standard American diet, is dangerously overloaded with too much garbage. I think the obesity levels would be an indication of that, and the morbidly obese indication. But now, with the new dawn of the 21st century, and there's going to be a huge culling of the peasant class due to money printing. And I think the Bitcoiners, of course, you can tell that they're into grass fed organic beef. They're into a lot higher quality of food. And so I think the pendulum of gastronomy will swing back toward a more robust, hearty food here in America, thanks to Bitcoin. Just another benefit of Bitcoin.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I was actually starting to think in my head, like, when you go across Europe, obviously there's just so much amazing food, right? There's just all sorts of regional, national cuisines that are just amazing, even in places like Germany. Okay, they have some of their own interesting food there.
Yeah, like living in France as I have for many years, it's always an oft quoted statistic that I think Charles de Gaulle said, how do you rule a country with over 350 varieties of cheese? Right? So there's a lot of different varieties of cheese. And if you go to a grocery store in France, you'll be amazed that there's an entire aisle with nothing but plain yogurts, but like 50 different varieties of plain yogurt. And at first you're like, why would there be 50 versions of plain yogurt? Then after you live there for a while, you're like, oh no, I need this particular plain yogurt. It's the one that I just is totally in sync with my need for this, right? You get into the subtleties of this plain yogurt. But in Germany, they've got over 1,500 versions of sausage.
I know. Like, okay, you put sausage, you put some mustard on sausage and some sauerkraut. Like, what else do you need? Like, it all tastes the same, right?
I would have thought of that would be true with plain yogurt. But, when you develop a palate for this type of thing, you're like into the subtle differences. So I'm sure, and the cheeses, of course, in French cheeses, you can spend years and years just studying nothing but French cheese. And I assume it's the same in Germany with sausages, that there's probably a whole subculture of people that just travel the country and do nothing but blog about sausage.
Anybody? I don't see anybody speaking up for French, for German sausages.
No, it's undercovered. That could be a big trend.
Everybody likes the cheese. Everybody's talking about their favorite cheese.
Mm.
Isn't there those moon cheese?
Moon cheese?
Yeah, we had the conference I held a few years ago. Moon cheese.
Oh, I remember that.
It's
Where
just
was?
like pieces of it's they're kind of like um junk food, but it's just actually all cheese. So they're made like Cheetos almost.
Oh, I saw it. I didn't try it. How about Laughing Cow cheese? Did you ever have that? Laughing Cow?
Yeah, they even have that in Paris,
Yeah, I
right?
used to get Laughing Cow cheese all the time. You tell you what I used to eat almost every day was couscous with an avocado, Laughing Cow cheese, and harissa sauce.
Yeah, Max has this thing. I love how the French just get so appalled by Americans. I've told you, like, I would order a glass of wine, even red wine, and then ask for a glass of ice on the side to put in it, and they'd stare at me like this. Is like, what do you
Well,
plan
I
on
mean,
doing?
obviously that's sacrilegious,
What do
and
you plan on doing with these ice cubes?
no, you shouldn't be allowed in the
But
country.
Max was even worse because he put harissa sauce on his cheese.
Maybe I've never seen anyone put harissa sauce on cheese like this, but harissa sauce is fantastic. It's from North Africa, and you don't see it really that much in the U.S. I mean, if you go to Whole Foods, you that they sell it, you can find it, but it's basically paste. It's a paste of chili paste, and
It's like from Morocco.
yeah, it's like Moroccan chili paste, and it's in France, of course. There's a huge amount of North African food cuisine, couscous, tangine, things like that. Remember when we were in Essaouira, we stayed at that riad, and
What
we
the
had,
French women owned.
yeah, the best tangine in the world. It was chicken and celery.
Oh, that one. Oh my God. That woman who made the food there, she was so amazing.
Yeah, that
Harissa
was
is the way to
incredible.
go, you all.
Yeah, so we're on the rooftop of this riad in the middle of Essaouira, 7:30 a.m. daybreak, and eating this fantastic tangine. So, oh, good stuff there. Really enjoyed it. Oh yeah. Speaking of Morocco, we've never really talked about a lot of our experiences in Morocco. I don't know if this is a good time for it. What else are we talking about?
Well, no, yeah, because well, everybody's talking about. It looks like Bitcoin's about to hit 36,000
Good,
again.
good. That's great.
So apparently they're associating any time we microdose with a new all time
Yeah, yeah.
high.
Well, yesterday I was with Daniela Cambone, and I gave my 21 prediction
Yeah.
for Bitcoin of 220,000 per coin. And so, it would make sense that we're going to hit new all-time highs quite frequently throughout the entire year. You're going to see 40,000, 42,000 pretty quickly here. And then you're going to start to see this thing really rocket in 2021. I think 2021, you'll see Bitcoin valuation, as I said to Daniela, it'll get over $4 trillion market cap. So that'll be getting toward half the valuation of gold.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll see what happens with gold, because gold at some point is going to have to be taken off its leash. There's been no good price discovery in gold for 10, 12 years. And so if they take off the collar and they let gold price actually trade at a market driven price, the price of gold could very quickly get to $3,000 an ounce. So that would very quickly put it up to 20 trillion or so, let's say, roughly. So
That,
then,
that
relatively speaking, Bitcoin would be at not half or getting close to half the valuation. It would be back down to a third of the valuation. And then you ask to figure out, are the global money flows going to now, since gold is free to trade, is it going to recapture that money flow, or is Bitcoin? We have to see how that develops.
Right, and I think in order to get it, as the system disintegrates, and I think the dollar system might disintegrate this year by August, by its 50th birthday, and I think in order to get it under control, because there will be chaos, I think they'll have to stop those gold price manipulation, because because the markets, the global financial grid, will need some stability.
We talked to Alistair McLean about this,
McLeod, yeah.
and that will be airing in very soon.
Yeah,
That
we just
episode,
interviewed
we
him
just
for Kaiser
interviewed
Report.
him, Alistair McLeod, and we had this conversation, and he makes an interesting point. Okay, because what you're saying is, if there's a reset,
Yeah.
if there's a new Bretton Woods, and they all sit down and they figure out, oh, there's too much debt, we need to simultaneously write off all each other's debt, and we need to recalibrate the global forex market against gold, like we've done so many times in the past. That would require a couple of things. Number one, an abandonment of Keynesian economics, which Alistair thinks no government's going to do that. In particular, America's not going to do that. And number two, if they do a reset of this nature, well, China and Russia, who've been buying gold heavily for 15 years, would suddenly have a huge advance on the global power table of powerful countries. And that's also abhorrent to, the West, which has been fighting this hoax threat for so many years now. So he basically makes a case for just outright political gridlock, nothing really being resolved, just gridlock and decay. And he himself, who's, when we first started talking to Alistair about Bitcoin many years ago, his appetite was near zero. Then it started to pick up, and now he's almost a full-fledged Bitcoiner at this point.
Yeah.
And he's saying, look, Bitcoin has got genuine price discovery, and he's saying the price could rip higher. I mean, that's coming from one of the biggest gold bugs in the world.
Yeah. Well, I saw Ritholtz Management, their chief operating officer, this past week. He was interviewed in the press, and he said, I was wrong about Bitcoin. And I know I was wrong because the market is telling me I'm wrong. So I have to change my opinion. And that's the most bizarre thing about people like Peter Schiff. I mean, Nouriel Roubini, okay, he's an imbecile, and he's an academic. So he feels like basically any economist who's an academic lives on handouts from the Fed. So those departments are financed by the Fed, and they feed the Fed with propaganda. So he's never going to say Bitcoin's great. But like Peter Schiff, I don't understand, because he's a money manager, and I don't understand, like, if you're a money manager, you live and die by the market. And if the market is telling you, Peter Schiff, you are a fucking imbecile, you moron. And like, he's like, no, market, you're wrong. I'm right. Market, you got to get it right. And it's just like,
yeah, I mean, that's an interesting contrast, Roubini and Schiff, right? So Roubini and Paul Krugman, they're academics, and so there's no accountability. They can be wrong forever and not lose their job.
Yeah.
And that's what's the great thing about being in academia. You can always be wrong, but especially if you get tenure, you have job security. So you never have to be right. Now, in the money market business, if the market is telling you you're wrong, you have to make a decision. Either you accept what the market is saying, the market signal, as it's called, and it's not the word signal is not used randomly. It's used quite specifically to denote a very specific quality of the price and the price discovery into the mind of those looking at it. It's communicating. If you ignore that, you have to do so because A, you are on a suicide mission, or B, you are stupid as a brick. C, so most people in the money management space, not most, but you see the dominoes falling.
Yeah.
Right? They're coming out. Barry Ritholtz Group and other people and all these, even Michael Saylor, again, he was a skeptic, then he became a believer, right? So eventually, you have to put your ego aside and say, the market is the signal. I have to accept the signal. I have to accept reality. I have to go with the flow. And here you have what the strange thing about Peter is that first, there's things you can say categorically. Number one, his clients at Euro Pacific Capital are underperforming Bitcoin. A price in Bitcoin, every single one of his clients is down 99.999% going back to 2009. Okay, that is a categorical fact that cannot be disputed. Number two, every single one of his clients is on an absolute basis underperforming Bitcoin by a huge percentage, like hundreds of percentage points. They're underperforming Bitcoin just on an absolute basis. So here, how do you stay in business? If I have a florist and I sell flowers with no blooms on them, I just sell the stems, how long could I be a florist? If I'm a restaurateur and I serve empty plates, with nothing on them. How long can that restaurant be open? If I'm a barber and I have a barber shop and I cut your hair with a lawnmower and an axe, how long will I stay in business? If I'm a money manager and I'm underperforming by hundreds of percentage points, every single one of my peers in the world and various teenagers and amateurs and Robinhood traders and housewives and Japanese housewives for years, how do you stay in business? Right? I don't think he's in business. I think he went out of business a few years ago.
Yeah.
And he's just
He
not.
can't have clients.
No, I don't think he has any clients.
Especially, I mean, you look at what Paul Tudor Jones is the one that actually set it in motion before, because Michael Saylor, he's managing his treasury. What he's doing is treasury management. What Paul Tudor Jones did was signal to the institutions of how to allocate their capital, like how to invest their capital. And he was the first to trigger this stampede. All these guys buying, like some fund just bought 55,000 Bitcoin for over $30,000 each. They bought that with total confidence because Paul Tudor Jones is in. That's why they're there. They know they know their clients are going to give them heck if they don't have a huge position, because they're going to say, why does Paul Tudor Jones fund have this? Why does Sten Druckenmiller's fund have this? Like, why aren't you doing it?
Exactly right. So he made it safe for hedge funds, and they've all followed suit. Michael Saylor made it safe for corporations, and many now are jumping on the bandwagon. Mass Mutual made it safe for insurance companies. Now insurance money is pouring in. As we have yet to see the first sovereign wealth fund announce a big Bitcoin position. I think we'll see that in 2021. We have yet to see a state say, look, we're adding Bitcoin to our strategic reserves. I think we'll see that in 2021. So there's still a lot of upside momentum in terms of the amount of money that can pour into Bitcoin. There is 100 trillion in liquid investable assets and 300 trillion that's inclusive of non-liquid investable assets. And the market cap of Bitcoin is still under 1 trillion. So if only 10% of that 300 trillion goes into Bitcoin, that's 30 trillion goes into something that's only worth less than 1 trillion, right? That's a 30x move from here, right? And then you get to that $400,000, $500,000 target. So you still have a 40x move from here, which is pretty remarkable considering we've already had a 9 million % return.
Right. People are asking, when does Elon Musk and Tesla purchase Bitcoin? I have a feeling he's going to announce it in the next earnings report because, basically Michael Saylor kind of suggested that they've been in touch, they've been communicating, but it's the sort of thing Elon would do. Like, he knows it's going to bump his stock price, and he owns a huge chunk of it.
Yeah. I don't know what the timing is on that. Clearly, he's not somebody that needs help in boosting his stock price. No. Whereas MicroStrategy stock had been dead for years.
Yeah.
And it hit during the dot-com bubble. It was trading, I think, near over $1,000, some really, really high level. Then it crashed almost 90%. And it's been slowly working its way back for 15, 16 years, but it had been doing nothing for years. So with MicroStrategy, they, as we were saying when they made the announcement, here's a way for a very smart rocket scientist, Michael Saylor, to start competing with Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk in the net worth category. And he realized that Bitcoin was his rocket ship to getting to that strata of mega wealth. Whereas Elon Musk, he's already now in the top 3 or 4 richest guys in the world. He's got this amazing business model of hyping the stock price up to 1,000 times earnings or 1,500 times earnings and then selling stock, right? So his balance sheet's ballooning with cash. He's able to sell stock at these inflated levels. Cathie Wood, is it, at ARK Investment?
ARK.
Right. So she still has a target for Tesla stock, which is still a lot higher from the current price. So he's not hurting, right? So he's not motivated. I think you have to really be motivated. A lot of companies who are suffering on the performance side are more motivated than Musk is motivated right now.
He's kind of like the Mike Milken of auto manufacturers, right? So he's going to do like right now. Tesla is like the same size as the stock market cap of all other auto companies.
Yeah,
but he only produces less than 2% of autos. So he could just like buy all the others. Like he could,
Right. There's a rumor that he was going to buy General Motors,
uh-huh.
right? So I mean, again, that would probably be dilutive and not help the stock price. And why have the headache of managing all those employees and such a huge organization?
And actually have to make cars. Like
Right,
this
and
is
have to make cars. I mean, who needs all that bother? When you, as a meme, you can just take it up to another to what 800 billion in market cap. So it's a fascinating story. I mean, this Kathy Woods, she's really writes a compelling story about how this is still an undervalued equity and it's going higher. It's outperforming Bitcoin. I mean, that's the other side of it, isn't it? It's outperforming Bitcoin. So last I
true.
checked. So,
True.
by putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet, is that going to hurt his performance? He's outperforming Bitcoin. That's how freaking rapidly the Tesla stock is moving. The other one that was outperforming Bitcoin in 2020, although not so much now, would be Square. Square started last year. That's the Jack Dorsey company.
Yeah.
They're into payments. He started offering on the app, the Cash app, the easy way to acquire Bitcoin. And that stock was up last year in the hundreds of percentage points. I think it was on a performance basis, outperformed Bitcoin.
It was up 200%, just over 200% from when I bought it in March at its low.
Yeah.
So it was like equal to Bitcoin in terms of how well it did last year. Of course, I mean that's the classic story, right? A lot of the gold miners and
Yeah.
who made the money in the gold rush, it was the people selling the shovel. So Square is selling the shovel. Plus, they did the whole converted $15 million worth of their treasury in July into Bitcoin, and that was at like under $11,000. So
Right.
that their treasury is looking good. That's up triple,
Yeah.
more than 3x.
Yeah. And, but this is also, we're looking for comparisons on calendar year performance, not necessarily from the March low.
Yeah.
And so that's factored in. You got to factor that in a bit because you had a big downdraft in March of last year.
Yeah.
And
a lot of things.
Yeah, and it was a significant correction in markets across the board. I think Bitcoin got to under 4,000.
Yeah, it was like 3,600, I think it was.
Right, so it was under 4,000. It closed the year at almost 30,000. So.
I mean, that's the thing about. I think it's just hitting an all-time high right now. 35,500 on CoinMarketCap. That's the thing about not having cash, for those amazing opportunities.
Yeah.
Like when Bitcoin flash crashed to just under $4,000, what happened is it was a cascading, crash across all markets because of the shutdown in the U.S. economy. But then there was a unique situation due to the vulnerabilities of the setup of BitMEX and the way they have their market makers.
Yeah.
So the cascade happened on BitMEX.
Yeah.
That's what happened. And then the exchange itself shut down. But it had BitMEX not collapsed and the server shut down, Bitcoin might have gone to 1,000 for all we know, because it was a cascade. They couldn't stop it.
Right.
So they pulled the plug and basically stopped Bitcoin from going down. But it was like the 1987 crash, what was just driven totally by algorithms.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I remember that now, that they had to pull the plug on BitMEX to stop it from going down to 1,000.
Yeah.
And of course, people hear that, like a Nouriel Roubini or other folks, and they extrapolate from that, and they come up with these fantastical conspiracy theories about the price of Bitcoin, and they don't do any real research into it and find out what's going on. And then Nouriel had a real, pissing match with Arthur Hayes. In London, they did I was supposed to go to that event. Yeah. I didn't go. But anyway, Arthur Hayes and Nouriel Roubini, they did this event, and then Arthur kind of put out a video of Nouriel and was trying to mock Nouriel. Nouriel really made it his mission to dethrone Arthur Hayes. And Nouriel, he goes to Davos. He talks to Larry Summers.
Snitched. Like he was probably getting people to, he's that sort of snitchy.
He became very vindictive.
Snitchy rat.
Yeah, he's a rat. He's a rat fucker. And so he had a personal vendetta against Arthur Hayes, and BitMEX has been suffering. But taking the BitMEX out of the equation was a big boost because market making got a lot better after that.
Mm. Yeah. That's a long, complicated story. Like that, this has always been the problem with every exchange going back to Mount Gox is their market making and how robust that is,
Hmm.
and that tends to be the thing that causes them to crash. That's what happened with Mount Gox before the hack, and then BitMEX. Obviously, that was a problem with their market making setup. Um, I mean, the BitMEX had more of like a, an actual New York Stock Exchange or the Chicago trading pits. They have actual like individuals with their own pool of Bitcoin acting as market makers,
Mm,
as independent
mm,
market makers.
Yeah, well, a couple things. So first of all, it was leveraged 100 to 1,
Yeah, yeah.
which is unique. I've never seen a market like that. I've seen, margin requirements on markets are such that you can tease it and get leverage, in the derivatives market, maybe 15 to 1 or something on a trade, really. But Arthur Hayes came out with this product, 100 to 1 leverage, which is remarkably irresponsible on so many different levels.
We've told him, you said that to him several times,
Yeah.
like over the years.
Yeah. It's really irresponsible to do that. Number one. Number two is that he was essentially the market makers. This gets into a whole discussion about market makers. So, market makers are there to be a buyer when nobody else is a buyer, and a seller when nobody else is a seller on market orders. And the way that they are perform this job is by maintaining an inventory of whatever it is they're making a market in this case, Bitcoin. So, according to regulations, the market makers are prohibited from front running orders, right? If you're a market maker and you see an order for a huge buy order, you can't go into the market ahead of that order and buy some for yourself in your inventory and then let the huge buy order come in and jack the price up. And then you get an instant profit and then you flip it. You can't, it's called front running. The market makers are not allowed to do that as part of the Securities Act of 1933, 1934, because one of the reasons you had the crash of 29 was corruption in the market making on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. So, so therefore, I think it's pretty obvious that you cannot pay market makers to essentially incentivize them to front run. So first of all, they're not supposed to be front running. But as Alan Greenspan famously said in the 1987 period, he said we always allow a little wiggle room for market makers because that's the price you pay for a liquid open market. He's like he's sanctioning corruption, and people look the other way. But to pay market makers to front run, which is essentially BitMEX's model,
Yeah.
is entirely wrong. I mean, this is so that whole platform was built on a dodgy premise, and it's not surprising that it got in trouble.
I just had to banish a boar. There's I mean, there's nothing worse than a boar in the orange pill world.
How are you spelling that?
BORE.
Okay, I thought you were going to say BOAR, like
No,
a
no, no.
wild
I would
pig.
now. I love wild boars. So I hate boars though
Yeah.
because like this is the most exciting time in history. Like okay, in 300 years, I'll say that. Like close to 300 years is the most exciting time.
Right.
And why be a bore? Like why be like dreary, pessimistic, scared, meek, like soy boy sort of cuck? Like why
I
be
don't
that?
know why.
Why? Like
Why?
it seems like the weirdest time to be that. Like sure, be it in the 80s, be it in the 90s, be it in the 2000s, but choose your future. Choose life.
Yeah.
Choose the orange pill. You could choose these things. Like once you understand that, like how easy it is to choose your
Yeah.
destiny,
Yeah.
it's hard to unsee that, like to unknow that. And I don't like it's
Mm.
amazing how most people, like 75-80% of people don't understand that they could actually choose their future.
Mm. Well, um, success is hard to handle, just like failure is.
True. True.
And you have, and with Bitcoin, you have so many millions of people now become successful over the past 10 years. They're beyond just making money now, because remember, you come for the greed, you stay for the revolution. So a lot of people, they
Mm.
made a few $1,000,000 and they're like, okay, actually I made that few million. Now what do I want to do? And they go out and they do something exciting like organic tomato farming in Peru. They do something, they follow their dreams, they follow their hopes and dreams. So, but that's actually not easy to do either. A lot of people are stymied by success. They become successful and it's confusing to them. They're more comfortable being failures. You know, that the whole city of Las Vegas is built on the premise that there's a lot of people who are very comfortable with their being a failure. And they love going to Vegas and losing money because it reinforces their comfort level. They're comfortably failing. They are comfortably failing, and this is, many people fall into this category. So it's, on one hand, you can say, well, why are people so dreary? And it's a good question, but what I have found is that there's a comfort level in dreariness that
Yeah.
not a lot of people are willing to step out of their comfort level and experience success.
That brings me to this amazing documentary we saw this past week, which is Diego Maradona and
Oh,
about his story. And I mean, I was tearing up just in the first 20 minutes. Like it not in like it's a weird thing, right? That euphoria, like that insanity of just how freaking famous he was. It's just so hard to comprehend. Like, you think of somebody famous and you're like, oh, Brad Pitt or something. It's like, holy shit. Like, it was this little 5'5" guy who just, like, it gives you all these goosebumps when he's out on the pitch. He runs out into the field and he's just like, so like millions of people just projecting all of their like hope in life
yeah. I had
on
no
this guy.
idea that in Naples, that the way the football world treated them were as less than human, right?
The city of Naples, yeah, went before Diego turned it around.
Right. So they were considered this the very poor, the
Yeah,
poorest area of Italy, and the football fans who visited the stadium there would roll out the most hellacious and racist and
they would
awful.
call them like they had cholera and
Right. They
like which is
stink.
a
They need a shower.
yeah
Right.
yeah
They're just like really, really humiliation. Right. So
yeah.
they really, and they were not particularly good. So he was literally, he delivered this entire city like in the hand of God. It means a few different things. Yeah, because of the goal against England
That was for Argentina. Argentina was similar to Naples in being like the bottom of the rung. They were, well, they were going through dictatorship. They didn't really discuss that, but they had horrible time there in Argentina, and they were considered just like a basket
right.
case
And
country.
football for many is a religion,
Mm.
and he was literally could walk on water.
But he like it was he delivered to all the people of Argentina and all of the people of Naples within Italy. Like he delivered honor and dignity to them. Like
Yeah.
made them proud, took them out of their position of being like the laughing stock. And but that the enormity of that burden must be just be huge. Like it was insanity when he walked out. Like he couldn't go anywhere. He became like a prisoner. Like he couldn't leave and go anywhere because he would just be mobbed, but and like grabbed and touched, and
Yeah,
everybody wanted.
there's always hands in his face
Yeah,
everywhere you go, and there was no coterie of
no,
protectors or anything. He was
he
just
was just like
always in the
driving around in
mob.
a little Fiat.
He's always in like mobs of people mobbing him. But then, after I saw that documentary, I went back and I watched some clip reels of his greatest goals, and it looks completely different because the story, the
Mm.
history, and then you see all these goals again, and the artistry and the skill and everything is like, uh, it is very emotional. I mean, the level of genius on the pitch was. I mean, watching it before the documentary, I'm like, wow, that's really amazing, and wow, that's so cool. But then having seen the whole story in this documentary, you're looking at it and it's incredibly touching, because then you know the backstory and you know what's happening in the outside and in the stadium, and you know what the whole story there, and it's incredible. So the filmmaker is the same filmmaker that made that documentary called Senna,
Mm.
about the race car driver Senna, which is probably the best documentary I've ever seen because of all the archival footage that they managed to get, the cameras on the car that they got from the Formula One organization. They have all this footage of actual racing footage. So the story is unfolding, and
In a real time, it
yeah, and
feels
the
horrible.
racing is the actual racing, and and at that stage in history, the cameras and things are very, very good. So you are really whipping around the racetrack with Senna at hundreds of miles an hour, and and they're really into these crashes and things. And that's a remarkable documentary. The other one he made was about Amy Winehouse, which I didn't see because it looked so freaking tragic and awful that I don't think I would be able to handle it.
Yeah, but like, I mean, the difference between Amy Winehouse and Senna and Diego Maradona is like it's weird looking back. You see the disintegration of the nation state. Oh, I thought I saw. You see the disintegration of the power of the nation state, right? Because one guy, Diego Maradona, one guy, Ayrton Senna, like I mean, obviously, when Senna died and when he was brought back in the military jet, and like millions of people were just out in the streets crying.
In
You're like,
Brazil.
imagine like who would do that in America right now, right? Like, nothing would bring. The JFK was the last, right? Like, who would bring America to a standstill today, or any European nation? Like, what that wouldn't happen. Like the sheer enormity of when Senna brought Brazil to a standstill, or when Diego Maradona returned from Mexico City and to Buenos Aires, and it was just like insanity, right? Like there's nothing you can imagine, like nothing like that happens today.
Yeah, I think also because and in Latin America, it's still steeped quite heavily in Catholicism, and you have a very Catholic population,
Yeah.
and you have people who worship saints and deities, and these heroic footballers and race car drivers become saintly,
Mm.
and so it triggers a religious fervor. So in the U.S., it's you don't have that religious fervor so much. I mean, you have the evangelicals, but there's no evangelical fervor in sports that I'm aware of. It would be like if Tom Brady. I mean, we had one football player who was an evangelical, and he did trigger some fervor. It might have been Doug Flutie, the quarterback, or another one after Doug Flutie. And so his career got kind of wrapped up with a certain religious rapture. But his career was short lived. He didn't do a huge career. If in fact he had gone on to win the Olympics single handedly for America, it could have triggered this type of outpouring. But no.
I suppose Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his assassination. I read also, like, I think it was Rudolph Valentino, the actor, the silent, some of those silent stars
Yeah.
were really, really famous. Like, and when he died, there were like millions of people that showed up in Los Angeles for his funeral. Like,
Yeah, Valentino had an incredible following.
yeah.
Um, that's right. I think just because he had a magical screen presence, didn't he? And
But there, I guess, yeah, like there were more. It was more of that when everybody used to sit around the radio, and there was only like one or two stations. Like it's weird how like that's more of a unifier. Then right now we have like 2,000 stations,
right,
and there's nothing like unifying everybody into one sort of identity, right?
right,
So back then we had like when we were talking about Kirsten Flagstad, the famous opera singer, and she was 19, came over from Norway and sang live on the radio. She was the star of the Metropolitan Opera in New York, and she sang live on the radio. And like the radio network went down because so many people tuned in to hear it.
Right.
So we don't have that sort of thing anymore. We don't have like the entire nation listening to one broadcast. Whereas like maybe in Argentina at the time you had that, Brazil, like maybe that was that's the difference between now and then.
Yeah.
Like if Orange Pill, obviously there's like 600 people sitting there. Like
yeah.
It should be 6 billion, but
right.
I'll take 600.
It's like a rapturous experience.
This is the exclusive.
They're joining
These
Orange
are the
Pill.
apostles.
They're becoming one with Orange Pill.
Yeah. These are the first 600. Soon it will be 6 billion.
Yeah. Well, you know, sports figures in the U.S. Of this type of magnitude who are we have never had a Diego Maradona type sports figure. I mean, you had Babe Ruth in the 30s. Okay, he's still huge, and I think he totally captivated the nation. And you have you know,
Kobe Bryant when
Kobe,
he died.
Michael Jordan is very huge, but was Michael Jordan equivalent to a Babe Ruth? Yeah, maybe close, but you know, not so much. We don't have any race car drivers really we have you know, stock car racing. We don't have really Formula One. Do we have any American Formula One race car drivers? I'm not.
We had kind of Michael Jackson in terms of artists. That was, he didn't die at his most famous, but he was very, very famous.
He did kind of totally go cosmic famous.
Yeah, he was like for a while in the 80s. That guy was like insanely famous. Like,
yeah, that's true. I'd say he's maybe the last like incredibly supernova superstar.
But you see what fame did to him and what it did to Diego Maradona.
Yeah.
Like, it obviously is not great. Like, it does something to your soul or psyche if you're not prepared, if you're not ready for it. Like I said, you know, in the last episode of Orange Pill, I said, be prepared for the good times. That's kind of what I mean. Is that you have to prepare yourself because you don't want to lose your mind. Like, you have to be ready for this.
Yeah, exactly. Success is takes as much preparation as failure. To deal with success is equally difficult as dealing with failure. And so there's that's the truth. People say, "Oh, I'm successful now and things get easier." That's not true. You're successful now and things are equally as tough as they've ever been, and in many cases it's even more difficult.
Because you're all alone. Because like you're you know, a lot of people are they're intimidated by your fame, and
there's the imposter complex,
yeah.
right? That people have, particularly in the arts, where it's acting or dancing or painting, where you get incredibly successful and famous doing something, let's say as an actor or as a painter, and then there's always that fear that that gift is going to disappear one day because you're not sure where it comes from and what if it disappears, and so you have that constant anxiety that goes with it. With Orange Pill and with Bitcoin, I think it's probably the ultimate ladder to self realization and individuation, in that it's based on a foundation that stretches back to the origins of humanity. So when you walk on Bitcoin, you're walking on the shoulders of all of humanity going back 200,000 years. You know, it's I saw an interview with Anthony Quinn once, the actor, and talking about acting. And he was saying that when he's acting, it all comes from the soles of his feet. And what he was saying is that it comes from the center of the earth, up through the earth, and then through the soles of his feet, and then out, right? And so he's grounded. That's how grounded he is, which is another way to say you don't have the anxieties of an imposter syndrome. You're grounded, and literally he was referring to the ground itself. When I went to Africa, and I was in Cameroon and Gabon, and basically French Africa, and Ivory Coast, and I was there over Christmas 20 years ago, and I noticed in Ivory Coast, in Abidjan, Ivory Coast.
Uh-huh.
There was this fishing village I visited over Christmas, and it had been there for hundreds of years. Essentially, it's African fishing village. And I noticed, the first thing I noticed there is that the African people living there, they were not walking on the earth, they were of the earth. There was a huge difference. I felt like I was very abstractly walking on the earth, and I didn't really have the relationship to earth. I mean, my eyes just observed this immediately. Like, these people are completely of the earth. They're in sync with the earth. They're in harmony with the earth, and in a way that I was kind of startled by it, because I was thinking, I don't have that relationship to my own planet, really. I don't really feel of the earth. I feel like I'm on the earth, and I feel like it's somewhat of an abstraction. But so this is, I think, like, getting back to artists and getting back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is of our collective unconscious. This idea that was discussed on Twitter this week about, is Bitcoin invented or is Bitcoin discovered? And I've said, Bitcoin is a discovery. It's not invented, because it was always in our collective unconscious, going back to the beginning of consciousness. And you can go back hundreds of thousands of years. You can go back a million years. There was always in our unconscious mind the construct of this Bitcoin and what it represents. And then in 2009, it was discovered, essentially. And that's why no other coin has ever competed with it, because there's only one E equals MC squared. Somebody else can say, oh no, E equals BC squared, right? A shit formula. And they'll say, my shit formula is as good as that formula. You're like, no, there's E equals MC squared is very specific, and you cannot muck around with that formula. You won't end up at the same place. So that's just like Bitcoin. There's only one absolutely scarce digital commodity, and that is Bitcoin. And everything else other than Bitcoin is not Bitcoin. It's something different. You can't compare them. And some people talk about them and they do stuff with them, and that's something interesting for them, but has nothing to do with Bitcoin.
Stacey for president. Okay.
All right.
No, I don't want to be president. Other than I want Air Force One. I would like Air Force One. And I would like, because I've seen like Air Force One land over Paris.
Yeah.
And, there's like 15, 20 like CIA jets all flying next to it, and refueling jets and stuff like that. So you're like, you could just stay airborne forever, and you could shoot down anybody who gets too close to you. Like, it's just like it seems nice. It seems nice. Like,
it's a nice ride.
It's a nice ride.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want that?
Do you have priority at the airport?
So I'll be president if somebody will be my co-president and they could do the running of the country. Because I don't want to do all that paperwork.
Yeah.
I just want to fly around in the jet, and I'm going to be like partying with the Orange Pill podcast group. And
right.
I think that's, and plus they have all those great pilots.
Oh yeah. They got the best pilots ever in the world.
That's important.
Yeah, totally. It seems like a fantastic jet.
Plus, you don't have to go through TSA.
No TSA.
No.
Nothing. It's got range. You can go. It's got like a 7,000-mile range, doesn't it? Air Force One.
Well, it has the refueling plane that comes up.
You got a refueling plane, so you can
just keep on going.
Yeah, you're like, let's just go right now.
And then, like, you don't have to wait in line. Like, you don't have to circle the airport waiting for a landing slot. You just fucking land. You just, like, go and land and just tell everybody, get out of my way.
Everyone get out of the way.
Move out of the way. Stacey's coming in for a landing.
Doot, 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 doot.
Yeah. I'm into this.
Yeah.
Would anybody vote for that platform, though? Like, if I ran with somebody, who wants to run with me? Who's the first person to say they'll run with me, and I'm going to pick them right now?
Really?
Okay. Who is it? And whoever I first see, they'll be my running mate. Okay.
Who will be vice president under?
Not even vice. They're going to be co-president.
Co-president?
They're going to be co-president because somebody has to be the president, like to sign the papers.
The executive president, and you're like,
and I'm the leisure
chairman of the board.
I'm the leisure president.
You're the leisure president, and then they've got the executive.
Okay,
president.
Mountain Sky.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think we would be elected if we went like, hi, I'm Stacey Herbert. This is Mountain Sky. We don't know his or her real name. but that's okay. This is the modern world. Mountain Sky is going to do all the paperwork, sign all those bills you people want, that free money, the $2,000, whatever. They're going to sign that, right?
Print it up.
Stacy here, she's going to fly around in Air Force One and go visit the people of the world.
That's right. That's right.
Do you think people...
Yeah, I'd vote for that. Mountain Sky sounds like a good resource.
Mountain Sky
sounds capable.
I think Mountain Sky, I don't know their policies or whatever, but matter. A president doesn't need policies.
You don't need any of that stuff. That's okay. This Mountain Sky is an excellent choice. Stacy as the leisure president. And I'm ready to vote for this package right away. Let's get it up and running. Let's run it up the flagpole and see who salutes it.
I would love to see if people actually voted for an anonymous person online called Mountain Sky.
I think we'll get to that point. We're almost at complete anonymity. What?
My uncle thinks I'm hysterical because he's like a former detective, and I was talking about we talk a lot, and I talk about all these people I communicate with online, and I for years, and I don't know their real name, and I don't know who they are.
Oh, right.
And I was like, and when he was just like making fun of me for talking to anonymous people, he said that right after I had just DM'd with Fartface 2000.
Oh, right.
And I was like, oh, right. That you are right. Because I was just talking to a guy named Fartface 2000.
Yeah.
And
oh, yeah.
And it seems normal to me.
Yeah. It's the new normal. It must be totally appalling for detectives.
Yeah. Because because detectives try to establish intent, right? So we were like, I don't know. The guy was Fartface 2000. What do I know? Like, I didn't know he was actually planning on robbing that bank. He did mention it, but I thought, like, I don't know. Is Fartface 2000 really going to rob a bank? Everybody brags online.
Yeah, exactly, Your Honor. I had no idea that the Fartface 2000 was a bank robber. I met him online, and we decided to run for president. Next thing I know, I see him on TV. He's robbed several banks. I had no knowledge of it. I don't even know. I don't know who it is. It's just a name. It's floating in cyberspace. I don't know anything about it, Your Honor. That's it. Dun dun dun. CSI cyberspace. Well, we checked through the body and we found that Fartface 2000 had a sliver of hair that could only have come from this rare Chihuahua from this region of Mexico. Stacy Herbert mentioned that region of Mexico recently in a podcast. Dun, dun, dun. Well, Your Honor, we found the hair of the Chihuahua right next to a gun that was registered to a Mr. Fartface 2000. Therefore, we decided to press charges. We impaneled a grand jury, and we've indicted the defendant, who will now face a jury of their peers to decide whether the Chihuahua hair was actually, where am I? Hello.
Well, this has been a great episode, and I'm so happy to be running for president with Sky Mountain.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And I don't know who Sky Mountain is, but I believe the people of America will vote for Sky Mountain. I do believe. And I'm really looking forward to flying around the world in Air Force One.
I think it's been a productive day. A really productive day. And I think it's time to sign off, I guess.
It's time to sign off. Thank you for joining us and for being with us on this Bitcoin journey, this rocket ship to the moon, this Air Force rocket ship to the moon, Air Force One rocket ship to the moon.
Bitcoin One.
Bitcoin One.
We're going to rename it.
Yeah.
Bitcoin One.
This is for Rick Stoner. He's like, can you do some movement without the mic in front of your face?
Oh.
Yeah. Do some movement. Move
oh,
the mic
yeah.
out of your face. Yeah.
This is for all of your memeing needs.
This is for his memes. We got to do it for the memes. Yeah.
Plucky, plucky, plucky is your plucky, plucky, plucky is your plucky, plucky, plucky is your plucky, 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 plucky. Vote for Stacy. Vote for Stacy. Everyone.
And Sky Mountain, whoever that is. Vote for Sky Mountain, whoever that is, and Stacy in 2022. 2024.